One of the things, um, alongside all of the really obvious, awful things that are going on around the world, that I've found really personally challenging is just knowing quite where to mentally put this whole season. Is it is it a time for some kind of rest, or is it a season of working and maybe even working even harder? I don't know if you identify with that, but the thing I've almost found most disorientating and tiring is not knowing which box to put this in. And I think there's something particularly uh, exhausting about when you are in rest mode or thinking maybe this is a chance for some kind of slowing down, and you're just your guards you're putting your guard down, your expectations are changing, and then suddenly this like jabbing thought comes in, oh no, you should actually be working, but just innovating and overcoming. And so you oscillate. I found I've oscillated between rest mode and then work mode, and then I'm kind of not doing either particularly well. um, I think it's a really difficult thing. I don't know if you guys identify with that. But I wonder if the question is not quite the right question, whether the Bible almost gives us things to do when you're in a kind of lockdown situation that don't really answer the work versus rest question, but are actually still really clear. When I look at Paul, who is a guy who wrote loads of the Bible, particularly the New Testament, or exclusively parts of the New Testament, he was often in a lockdown situation, but in prison. And there was at least four things that he did that you can clearly see that we can do. Like, what does Tom Shaw do with this season? Is it work? Is it rest? I don't know. It's kind of a bit of both. But I tell you what, the first thing that Paul did was he praised. That means we worship. It means he you see again and again when he's writing his letters from prison, when he's in lockdown, he's worshipping God a lot. It even says at one point he was singing in jail at midnight. So for Paul, lockdown meant first of all an awful lot of worship. That's really helpful, actually. I don't know necessarily whether I am someone who generally does that. I kind of think I do, but actually do I? I think that's the first priority for us. God wants his children to be those who genuinely do what Paul did. Number two, second P, I think we're called to ponder. I think Paul, you can see again throughout his writings from when he's in prison, when he's in lockdown, he's thinking deeply. One of the biggest issues in the church today is shallowness, just superficiality. We don't tend to think slowly and deeply about really anything. Lack of depth is an epidemic in its own kind. I think I've found over these last few days, as I've started to surrender to maybe this is here to stay, an invitation, I think, in my heart to just think more unhurriedly and more deeply about God, about life, and honestly, even about what's going on in my heart. I've noticed I've been pretty angry, just being really honest with you. I've seen some sort of like quiet anger. I've been emotionally really thin, been running 100 miles an hour the last few months, really. Pondering who is God, what's he saying, but also pondering and thinking deeply about how am I doing as a husband, as a dad, about my own spirit, my own soul. Is it in a good place? It's a huge invitation from Paul in lockdown. Number three, he penned a lot. He wrote a lot. And I think taking those ponderings, those thoughts, and putting them down, really, if it's just journaling, I think is a hugely biblical activity. That's success. I think it's real success. I think taking seriously the things that are occurring to us and getting them down, for many of us, is not something we really do. But I think that being an aspect of what God might be wanting to bring into our lives is certainly all across the pages of the New Testament when lockdown is a thing. And fourthly, prayer. Huge. You see, again, Paul, when he's in lockdown, he prays and he prays. We as Christians, if we honestly dare to say we know God and we do not ask that God to do things to help the leaders of this nation, the leaders of our cities, those in authority, to actually help those who are suffering, to heal them, to protect them, to provide jobs. This needs to be a time more than ever where, like Paul, well, we can't do a lot of the physical things we used to do, but what we can do is open our mouths and pray more than ever. Prayer in seasons of lockdown is another no-brainer according to what Paul did. I could say more P's, but I hope that's helpful. I've found shifting the question from is this work, is this rest, to, well, actually, what does the Bible say Paul did when he was in those seasons of confinement? I found helpful and has taken some of the pressure off, and actually not just taken pressure off, but given me a excitement about diving into at least those specific 4 things. I hope it's helpful for you too.